let's make some cinnamon rolls. I'm gonna make a double batch today so I can have some in the morning for breakfast before church, and my family also wants some this evening. So I'm gonna make the double batch. You can either half it, or I will post the regular size batch in either the comments or in the description. So first, I'm gonna start with 1.5 cups of warm milk. And then 1/2 cup of sugar. I'm gonna use a tablespoon of yeast. You can also use 2 packets of the instant rise yeast. It's like 2 3/4 teaspoons, which is almost a tablespoon. Or if you're making a single batch, just 1 packet. Now, give that a whisk. Mix it all up. And then I'm gonna let that sit for about 5 to 10 minutes while I do other stuff around the kitchen, and then we'll come back to it in just a minute. The yeast is not super bubbly, but there's a million things to do, and I like to make my baked goods around my schedule. So normally the recipe calls for 1 egg and 1 egg yolk. I have made a single batch of these one time, and I learned my lesson. It makes quite a few, but people in my house really like cinnamon rolls, and I like to share them with people. So instead of doing, 1 and 1 egg yolk for each one, and then wasting the egg whites of 2 eggs, or putting them away in the fridge and somebody going, "What's this?" I just use 3 eggs. It's always worked out great. Nothing bad's ever happened. It's fine. Everything's adaptive. It'll be fine. So we're gonna whisk those in there. And then I have a whole stick of melted butter. Hopefully this is not too warm. Hopefully it doesn't kill my yeast. But we're gonna find out. Alright. Now, this is real life. Things are gonna get pretty hard to make soon anyway. We'll just skip to something a little sturdier. So I need 1.5 teaspoons of salt. I like kosher salt. You can use whatever salt you got. Alright. That mixed in. And then overall, you're supposed to have about 6 cups of flour. When it comes to breads, how much flour you need really, really depends on a whole bunch of different things. It depends on the moisture in the air during the day. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start with 3 cups, knowing that we're gonna need more. Something that you can learn, a skill you can learn that's really, really, really helpful, and really helped me a lot with having consistency in my breads when I make them, has been learning what you want the dough to feel like. So I'm gonna add in another cup-ish for right now, because I know that it's gonna need quite a bit more. It's still pretty liquidy. You can do this with the stand mixer also. I have one, but there are so many things that you don't have to have. And a lot of people don't just have, especially if they don't do a ton of baking. Most people, if they're not baking, they don't have a stand mixer just sitting around. And that's kind of expensive. It's very expensive, especially if you buy the name brand ones. And I want everybody to know that you can do this with very few tools. You don't even have to have the whisk. You don't have to have nothing. You can use a fork instead of a whisk. You can use what you have. I took it out and I didn't even flour my counter because there was still some that needed to be, worked into that. And it's still pretty sticky-ish. And I've got flour on the outside. It's gonna get a little bit stickier as I need it. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna take not quite a half a cup and just sit it right there. Take some of that and put it over my dough. I'm gonna scoot that off to the side a little bit so that it's not getting in my dough and I can just kind of grab some as I need some. I don't have to reach back into my flour container. I don't have to touch my measuring cup with my dirty hands. And I'm just gonna knead it. And as it gets sticky, you want it to be a little bit sticky, but if it starts to get gloopy, if it starts to really stick to your hands, you just grab a little bit more of the flour, put it up underneath of it, roll it like that into it, just keep on kneading. So you're gonna knead this for about 5 to 10 minutes until it's pretty smooth. If you've got a stand mixer, just let it go, walk away for 5 minutes and come back. If you're doing it by hand, obviously it's not as efficient. 10 minutes is probably better. It's a lot of work when you're kneading the dough by hand, but it's so worth it. All right, so I've been kneading this dough for about 7 or 8 minutes, not too terribly long, and I don't know exact measurements on how much flour I put in. I just put in a little bit at a time until it gets to the point where it sticks like that to your hands, but your hands come out clean. And then the dough is looking pretty smooth. It's not super lumpy. It's looking pretty soft. It's good. I'm gonna take the exact same bowl I just made my dough in, and I'm just gonna spray a few times, not too much. It doesn't have to be olive oil. It can be whatever grease you've got. And then I'm gonna turn my dough around in it to coat the dough. All right, and now I'm gonna get a clean kitchen towel and I'm just gonna cover it over the top. The warmer the spot that this is in, the faster it's going to rise. The colder, the slower. If you stick your finger down in it and it doesn't immediately spring all the way back, it's finished rising. So we're gonna make the filling, which is super simple. For this, it is a stick of softened butter, and then I need a cup and a third of brown sugar. So I've got a third of a cup measuring cup, so we'll need 4 of these, and I like to pack them in really good. And then we're gonna need 3 tablespoons of cinnamon. I'm gonna take this and mash it around. Now you don't want to have to microwave your butter and end up with liquid butter. It really does need to be softened for this, which I am terrible about doing. I always forget, and then I end up having to microwave it, and it's terrible. So just take the butter out whenever you're starting to make the dough for all of the rest of the recipe, because if you don't, this, which is kind of stiff, like you can build a sandcastle with it, if you don't, it's going to be liquid, and putting it on your dough once it's all rolled out is going to be a disaster. It will. I've done it many times. It still tastes delicious. It makes a giant mess. So I'm not even going to flour my surface. I like for my cinnamon rolls to be super gooey and warm and delicious. I don't like floury. I don't want the bread to be tough at all. And so I avoid adding flour any chance. What I do is I use the bench scraper. This is a Dollar Tree bench scraper, the $1.25 per. Now I'm again doubling my recipe. Keep this covered if you are not actively working with it, so that it doesn't dry out. So what we're gonna do is pat it down just a little bit, and then we're gonna roll this out pretty thin. All right. So when your dough is about 1/4 of an inch thick. I'm gonna take your filling, and helps if you dab it in other places. That way you don't end up with one huge raised spot, a bald spot. It just helps to keep it a little easier to smooth around. And you're gonna spread it out. Except for this is a double recipe. Oh my gosh. I do that a lot. It happens. Happens to all of us. No amount of cooking will ever get you to stop making little mistakes. And then what I'm going to do, I do recommend a bench scraper to absolutely everyone. These tools, even if it's just for getting bits of dough off your counter, they're amazing. They're perfect, they're wonderful. We're gonna roll over just a little bit to start, to get something to hang on to. And then we're gonna pull, then roll. So now we have this nice pretty log, and I think technically the recipe is supposed to make 12 out of each one of these logs. I have 2. I like giant cinnamon rolls, so we're gonna make 9. All right, now I have a greased baking dish. I use the bigger ones, the ones from the middle. I always put those on the outside corners because those are going to cook a lot slower, and the smaller ones are going to burn faster. So we want to put the smaller ones towards the center, and the larger ones on the outside. Like this, give them some space to rise. And then I'm going to take the towel and set that over the top to keep them from drying out. Because I'm making half of these for in the morning and then half of them tonight. I'll get to show you how to do the rest of it. But these are gonna go in the fridge. So I'm gonna cover these. I think you could probably freeze these too. I've never done that, so don't quote me on it, but I feel like you could probably put them on some parchment paper on a cookie sheet and freeze them for an hour or so before putting them in some type of bag or something just so they don't stick together. So I'm gonna throw these in the fridge. Alright, so I've let these rise a lot longer than I expected to. And now I'm gonna take just little pieces of butter. I'm gonna take a pat and cut it into 4 pieces and top each one of them with just a little pat of butter. This is the secret to making wonderful cinnamon rolls. After that, you're gonna take a little bit of heavy cream and just maybe a tablespoon on each one, just right over the top. And then you're gonna bake them in a 350-degree oven for 20 to 25 minutes. I always cover mine in foil for about the first 10 minutes, and then I take that off and I watch for them to brown. So I have a whole block of cream cheese softened along with 6 tablespoons of softened butter, and I'm going to beat these until they're smooth. Alright, now I'm gonna add a teaspoon of vanilla. I'm not going to measure it, but that's how much you need. Beat that again. Alright, now I'm going to add 1.5 cups of powdered sugar. Remember, this is a doubled recipe, so half of this is going to go in the fridge tonight. Because I don't want to wear all of this powdered sugar, I'm gonna give it an initial fold before I beat it again with my mixer so that it's nice and smooth, otherwise it'll be grainy. Alright, there is a wonderful cream cheese icing. Here they are. I'm going to give them about 10 minutes to cool, and then I'll put some icing on them if it can wait that long.